You should come to training, okay? We'll put you through the rows and we'll see how it goes, man. But
see how it goes. If you need the goalie from the fans, you can be like, hey, I could be the guy. I'm just letting you know. Welcome to episode 4 of Film Never Lies. And before we get into our guests later on, we're going to talk some football storylines this week. And one of the things I wanted to put on everyone's radar, which I thought was probably for me the most shocking, was the situation of Buffalo Bills. You know, they come off such a great dominant win against Kansas City. And if we go back to that game, I thought of all the regular season wins that they've had against Kansas City, that was the most impressive one because I thought they dominated on both offense and defense. You know, you look at some of the plays that Kansas City did complete in that game, some of the yardage, and a lot of it was off schedule, and it just felt like every yard Kansas City got, they really had to earn with doing miraculous things. And a case in point of that is if you look at Patrick Mahomes' incompletions, he had a ton of them. And then you come in and you play the Miami Dolphins, who are a much, much, much worse team than Kansas City, not only from a coaching standpoint, but from a just simple roster standpoint. And you get dumped. And it's a rain game, and it just negates what happened last week. And I'll say, let's start with the Bills' offense. No shocking thing about the whole ordeal was that James Cook had 53 rush yards. He had over 200 a couple weeks ago against Carolina, 114 against the Chiefs, which is a very, very good run front. And then against a Dolphins front seven, gets kind of balled up a bit. I think he averaged 4.1, and he was under 4 for most of the game. So you can't run the football. And then if you look at Josh Allen and the way they threw the football, it wasn't very efficient. The numbers looked great at the end of the game. They were playing from behind. But part of that issue and with the turnovers were, again, off schedule. And it's great to make off schedule plays. They can be a huge part of your game. But when it seems like every single drop back is that style of play, that's when mistakes will eventually occur. And unfortunately for the Bills, that happened at very, very bad times. You know, you think of the Dawson Knox throw in the end zone, interception. They're trying to make an off-schedule play, and they're just on different pages. But beyond, you know, the game, we could talk about that all day. I think what I really wanted to touch on and what I'd like to kind of put fans, whether you're a Bills fan or just a football fan, in the mindset is how different there can be, the different of opinions, I should say, between your coaching staff and the front office and how there could potentially be ulterior motives. So I watched an interview with Brandon Beane, and we're going to play some of that for you right now.
Believe me, I went home as mad as any other fan, or as mad. Like, I wanted to do things. I'm always wanting to do things to make this team better. But I also believe in our roster, too. And I do believe we can win a championship with this roster. But as I said earlier, I cannot force someone to trade me a player. It takes two. Candidly, I would have lost money yesterday on the Bills doing a move, like if you were in Vegas.
So he says he would have lost money. I'm assuming that means he doesn't want to overpay for a player. And my point here is, why not? Seriously, if you're a Bills fan right now, I think you would agree with me. I think the majority of Bills fans, if you won the AFC Championship, that would be great. But if you then lose a Super Bowl, you're still not happy. You're not content. You have Josh Allen. He's arguably the best football player in the world. He's the reigning league MVP. You've been right at the doorstep year after year after year. This is a team and a franchise and a fan base that wants to win a Super Bowl. If now is not the time to overpay for a guy, when is? And again, I get that, oh man, like we don't want to overpay or it's a bad deal. So what? If it means winning the Super Bowl, then do it. Again, make that gamble. I look at Quinnen Williams, who went to the Cowboys. Do I think the Cowboys might have overpaid? Sure, time will tell. But I'll tell you right now, if you look at this Bills defense that's lost Ed Oliver, that's lost Hoyt, okay, you put Quinnen Williams in there, that's a massive shift. And would he have been a difference maker yesterday? I think so. And you talk about overpaying. Oh, we overpaid for a player. Well, where my head goes as an ex-player is how much money would you pay for a home playoff run? Seriously, because now you're 2 games back of New England, And you've missed the tiebreaker at the moment because you lost to New England, so they have that tiebreaker. And by the way, New England's schedule is insanely soft in comparison to yours. So when I think about overpaying for a player or losing money in Vegas, it's not just the player. Having Josh Allen at home throughout the playoffs, having teams have to come into that stadium, which is nuts, and deal with Bills Mafia, to me is worth overpaying. You know, you look at Waddle yesterday, who had a couple big plays against him. And I don't know. I'm not a GM. I'm not in the front office. But was Waddle available if you overpaid? Certainly sounded like it was, according to reports. He's another guy. Yesterday, Kincaid pulls the hamstring, and you're looking for a spark from that wide receiver room. And Keon Coleman did have a nice touchdown late in the game. But that's been an issue year in and year out. Why can't we get a star guy in there, at least another piece? So again, I guess why I say I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation is for Bills fans and for just football fans in general, sometimes speaking, and I'm not accusing Brandon Beane of this, but you really got to put yourself out there. I like to say put your nuts on the chopping block and be like, hey, we're going to make this deal and it might backfire and it might look at me, but I'm doing it at the moment to try and win a Super Bowl. And the reality is when you've got Josh Allen and you've got the Bills and they're always going to win as long as Josh is there, you know, I thought the Bills played it safe and everyone's job is going to be very, very cushy because they're going to have a good record at the end of the year. And if Josh plays Superman ball in the playoffs, they might go to the Super Bowl. But if he doesn't, they're not going to be there. And that margin of error they have is very, very small. I just thought yesterday was a very disappointing loss, especially coming off of the big win against Kansas City because it kind of negated that. Right now, if I were to be doing a power ranking in the NFL, I'll be very, very honest with you. The Los Angeles Rams would be number one for me. Let's take a gander at their record right now. They've got some good wins. They just blew out an injury-riddled Niners team. But I look at this team and I say, I'm not sure they have a weakness. But that being said, it starts and ends with Matthew Stafford. You know, the only reason they're not undefeated right now is because of the two losses had some kicking issues, which they addressed by going out and signing a thicker kicker, who might be my favorite signing of the week. But let's go back to Matthew Stafford for a second. I had the privilege of playing with Matthew for 1 year in Detroit, and I've never really seen anything like this guy. And he just was very different in the way that he acted, the way he approached the game. Like, I remember we were in OTAs this year. This would have been 2018. Again, I'm the new guy. I was going into year 6. And I got like a 5-yard out route in OTAs. And because Patricia was running the helm at that point, OTAs were a lot more intense than what other coaches might have. So it was a pretty intense day. Caught like a 5-yard out, nothing special, turned it up, first down, whatever. And the ball was like right on my kind of outside shoulder, I should say, I guess inside when I break out. And I remember sitting there thinking, hey, I kind of pivoted with it, got off the field, good play. And Stafford came to me and was like, hey, my fault. I'll get that on your other shoulder so you can turn up a little easier. And I remember being blown away because it was the first time in my life that I had ever like heard a quarterback say something like, hey, it's my fault there. But also like it was such a minuscule thing and it was a positive play that it just, again, it blew my mind. And that's just the type of leader and how accountable he was. You know, you see some of the plays he's doing right now with the no-look passes. I mean, he's leading the league in touchdowns at 25. He's only thrown 2 picks. He looks wildly comfortable. He looks like he's having fun. He's doing dances after these things. They're 8-2, and again, it would be undefeated if it wasn't for kickers. So my favorite kind of Stafford moment was I remember that offseason because I was living in Windsor, Ontario that year, kind of hometown team. Stafford was looking, hey, this is after OTAs, kind of before camp, and he was like, hey, like, who's in town? I'm in trying to throw, and he was at a high school in the Michigan area. And I'm like, yeah, I'll obviously be there for sure. So myself and one other tight end showed up. And generally speaking, when it's, you know, a single quarterback and you're running routes, just for everybody, there's only a certain amount of balls you can throw because his arm's going to get sore. And there's 2 of us going. There's only 1 of him. And I remember sitting there, and it was like, bam, myself and the gentleman I was with was Hakeem Valles. We were just snagging ball. Route, jog back, another route. We got to the point where I bet we each ran 30 routes, and I'm like, man, this is full speed, full beans on us, but also on Staff. He's thrown 60 balls, you know, as hard as he can, basically. And I asked him afterwards, I'm like, is your arm not even a little sore, remotely sore? And he was, I think he said something to me like, man, I got a rubber arm. This thing's like a pitching machine. And I tell you, he was right. It didn't matter where, when, how, different arm slots, whether he's looking at the guy, not looking at the guy. His ability to throw the football was second to none. And then on top of that, his brain worked like a computer. He was the first guy I played with where he'd get out there and it was just, you felt so in control. You know, you're in the huddle. Hey, Stafford knows exactly what's going on. He could dissect defenses. You see him all the time. Go through progression, 1, 2, 3, check down, manipulate guys with his eyes. Even some of these no-look passes, he's not doing it to show off. He's manipulating defenders to try and hold guys. So at this stage of his career, the way he's throwing the football, he's healthy. The numbers are outrageous. He's certainly an MVP candidate, and I couldn't be more excited for Matthew Stafford. It's time to bring in this week's guest. He's best known in this country as the head coach of Canada's senior men's national soccer team. He grew up in Wisconsin. He played college soccer at Princeton, 14 seasons as a defensive midfielder in the MLS. He's described by his teammates as a winner that commands respect. He was no stranger to contact as he committed 450 fouls in his career and had 57 yellow cards. As a manager, he's won the Supporter Shield in the MLS, the Austrian Bundesliga, and the Austrian Cup. He's one of just 4 Americans to coach in the Premier League. In just 6 weeks into his tenure as Canada's coach, a 4th-place finish at the Copa America. He's now tasked with taking an incredibly talented Canadian team to the next level. They're heading into a World Cup on home soil. Let's bring in Jesse Marsch. So here he is, Jesse Marsch. And before we get into any hard-hitting soccer questions, Coach, I got to ask you, Pete Carroll's a big mentor of mine, and I always used to say that Pete kind of had us all in like a jack-in-the-box. He'd wind us up during the week, and then on game day, it was like he always timed it perfectly. Big pregame speech where there was a video, what was going on. But football's a little different than soccer now, where, you know, we come out here and the kickoff goes, and we've got Motley Crue banging through the stadium, smelling salts being passed around, and it's like, okay, the next 3 hours, you just, you know, play out of your mind, play free, but it's an aggressive ordeal. For you, are you ever worried, you know, we just mentioned pretty intense player, 450 fouls, which we're going to get into. Are you ever worried about pushing the guys and getting them too excited going into a big match?
Well, look, first, Pete was a neighbor of mine in LA. So we both lived in Manhattan Beach, and I wouldn't say he's a friend, but I got to know him a little bit. And I, you know, would talk to him about, you know, some of his ideas and philosophies with the way he coaches. So I really like who he is and the way he is as a leader. I definitely am known for being a motivator. I do believe that being an inspirational leader is important when you're talking about high-level competition. But there's always, for me, a little bit of like also really focusing in on the details and having your finger on the pulse of exactly what's necessary for every moment. But I can say that like this group of players, they really, I think, enjoy the way we play. They're benefiting from the aggressiveness that we're building into the team. I think that they are fully understand the strategies and why we play the way we want to play, how it really accesses their true talents. So, look, I really enjoy those last meetings, right, where you kind of frame the whole team's mindset exactly around where we are in our overall progression in time and how to make sure that they're ready to perform from the start.
I love that. Now, Jesse, one of the things I find fascinating, and again, we don't have this in football whatsoever, but being an international head coach, you don't get to have these guys under your control all year. So from a fan's perspective, how do you manage, okay, so this Thursday, you're playing at BMO, playing a friendly against Ecuador, but how do you manage once they go back to their clubs? Do you give them like, this is what you need to do for our team? And how closely are you following every single player?
So that's the $10,000 question for international football. And I was told when I even started doing this, because I came from club football, that it's not possible to implement a style of play around international football. But I found the opposite. And it's more about the precision of the way that you teach and lead and coach. But also, yes, what I've tried to do is challenge our players to take the lessons and the philosophies of how we try to do things. And look, my way of thinking about this is taking my experiences of coaching in the Premier League, coaching in the Bundesliga, coaching in Champions League, seeing what the best teams and best players look like and seem like, and when you watch them up close, what makes them good, and trying to implement that here with our players and give them an opportunity to understand this is what the best players are like. This is what the best games are like. And this is important for when we're together with Canada, but it's important for you to implement this and put it to practice in your everyday process of achieving excellence and achieving your potential in your career in general. And I think that the players have done that well and has helped them individually progress themselves, and then it's benefited the Canadian national team.
So, Jesse, first off, I love that. And I know you said he's kind of more of an acquaintance and a friend, but you do bring, you're sounding a bit like Pete Carroll right now, which is my guy. I love this. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted kind of fans to hear, and I think this is a testament to you and your staff, is I'm going to go back to my first year. We went to the Super Bowl, and as a rookie, for winning the Super Bowl, I actually made about 4 times more money than I did in any other game.
Yeah.
However, if you were a guy on our team that was making, let's say, 10, 11 million that season, playing in the Super Bowl is a massive, massive pay cut.
Yeah.
So you talk about this game Thursday. How do you as a coach create a culture where guys, some of the bigger name guys in the team that are making money, want to fly into Toronto through the snow, suffer through that, just to be with the group and represent this country, when we all know that, their bodies are at risk and they're not getting paid like they would be on some of the other teams? Like, is that a tough needle for you to thread, or is it pretty easy to just say, hey, you get to wear, the Canadian national jersey?
Yeah, look, there's 2 things for me. First, I think everyone in our player pool understands at this moment in time what kind of opportunity lies ahead of us. With a home World Cup in Canada, a chance to represent the country at the highest level in the most meaningful sporting event in the country's history. Like, I think everyone knows exactly where we stand and how important it is. And they are all truly honored to represent the country, to represent the Canadian national team, right? So there doesn't take a lot of motivation as to what's important and why we're doing this. But in addition to that, is I try to create always the highest standards, not just for the whole group and for like the players that are in the starting lineup or are in the squad, but for the best players. Like, when Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and Stefan Eustáquio, when they come into camp and they commit themselves the most to the team and they work the hardest in training and they show the best attention span and attention to detail with everything that we do, and I push them the hardest and I hold them to the highest standard, then how can anyone else do any less? Right? So that's a leadership philosophy. But again, with this group, it doesn't take huge reminders because they're good men. Like, the best example is Jonathan David came to Gold Cup, captained our team, had no contract at once July 1st came. He hadn't decided who he was going to sign with. He wound up signing with Juventus, but basically he went through what we don't pay them much for the Canadian national team compared to what they make in their day jobs. He played almost every minute. He committed to every training session. He gave himself 100% to the process of what we're creating with the Canadian national team. And when you have guys like that and you have character guys like that, it makes it a lot easier on the coach to manage everyone else.
I'll say this, and you seem like a very humble man. As an ex-athlete myself, a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff. I know you're not going to say it, but I'll say it for you. As a guy who has, been around the block a little bit, I can definitely see guys wanting to play for an individual like yourself. So flowers to you and the staff
Thanks,
for that.
man. Yeah, thank you.
But now here's another strange one, again, as an outsider. We talk about player development in Canada, and we're going to get into this in a sec here. But before we get into youth development, which I've got some gripes about football as well.
Yeah.
Again, for this conversation, we'll keep football and soccer a little separate.
Okay.
But do you ever find that you'd rather players play on teams that maybe aren't as great so that they get more game time? Or would you rather a Canadian, and I'm talking about more of, we talk about depth on Team Canada. Do you have a preference personally if they're, hey, this is a great organization or great club, I should say, but they're not getting a ton of minutes on the pitch? Or would you rather them be, let's say, in an MLS team versus playing somewhere in Europe?
Look, I think in sports in general, what you're talking about is there's always this balance between challenging yourself, right, and trying to see how much you can adapt to higher levels and grow within the game, so that you give yourself the chance to make the next steps always in your career, but doing it in a way where you can be challenged but still experience success and put things to practice, right? And it's interesting because look, in your sport there aren't so many teams. Okay, if you go to college football, then you have a lot of ideas and different ways that places you can go and different styles of play. In our sport, you're talking about every country in the world, culturally what it means to play in England versus Spain versus Brazil versus Canada versus whatever, right? And then you're in there, you're also talking about the different levels. So you have first division, second division, third division. Then you have different styles of plays and different coaches. And so these players working with their agencies, and I tried to be close to them as well and try to make decisions that are best for their career so that they can take the right steps, they can set themselves up for year after year success where they can continue to make money, because you know what it's like these sports, still you're making generational changing money for your families. So you're trying to set them up for success so that they can also be financially secure and their families can be financially secure, and trying to do it in a way that also represents what we're trying to do with the Canadian national team so that we can be successful on the biggest stage next summer. These are big math equations to try to sort through, but you just try to use your experiences, like as a player, as a coach, knowing people that have been through situations, knowing agencies and sport directors and all these different things, and you're trying to now put pieces to the puzzle together for each individual so that they can give themselves the best chance to achieve their overall potential and be the best that they can be. And again, you have something unique here with Canadian athletes. There's a uniqueness to the humility, the work ethic, the commitment to being part of something. Canadians are special this way. And there's, along with that, I'm trying to teach this team more belief in themselves, right? Almost more arrogance, and who's better than an American to bring that along, right? But
I understand. Listen, I've spent a lot of time in the States, so I understand.
But the balance of helping them to take the right steps, to challenge them to believe in themselves, to challenge them that they can do more, that they can commit to even harder and stronger, and then do it in a way where they still really enjoy and are rewarded by the process. This is what drives me in supporting these young men. And by the way, I believe in them because they're such good people.
And Jesse, again, as we were prepping for this interview, I started kind of trying to put my mind in what it's like to be you. And to further what you're saying, I just thought, I'm like, again, I use the term threading the needle, where you get guys in, you've got to create this culture in a short period of time. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this guy's in this country over here, someone else is in Europe, someone else is, in the southern United States.
Yeah.
And I think it's been phenomenal. As everyone knows, this men's team has captured the nation with the success you guys have had. And I know everyone's extremely excited for next summer.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I would like to ask your thoughts on the development of Canadian soccer from a youth level.
Yeah.
And let's not call it, when I say youth, I'm not super interested in the extreme youngins. But is there any direction or shift that you felt since being the head coach of Team Canada, or a direction you'd like to see the country go when it comes to developing at, let's call it, the teenage ages and above?
So, look, I've been brought on to make sure that the team is good next summer, right? That, this is my number one job. And if the team doesn't do well, nobody's going to want to see me back around here again, right? So I'm very clear on specifically what my job is and what's priority number one. But I think my passion project in this is to know that there's still a lot of work to do in terms of tying all of the spheres of influence together in this country so that we can have a more clear direction as exactly where we want to go. So, the most important thing we can do is create a better youth national team system for our young players, right? And this is both on the boys and the girls side. And right now, the U17s are playing in the World Cup, and I'm not sure if you've followed that, but they beat Uganda on a late goal, and then they drew against France, who's one of the best teams in the country. And next, they play against Chile tomorrow on Tuesday at 7:30 in the morning here in Canada. And we've tried hard to implement the style of play and the Canadian DNA of what we're trying to do in terms of converting our first team. We're trying to also implement that across all of our youth national team levels. And we're also trying to raise money and create a better financial and structural foundation for what the CSA is, the Canadian Soccer Association, so that more players have more touch points and more experiences of playing at the youth national team levels. Because our soccer Canadian Federation is worse than most African nations, and I'm not exaggerating on that. So it's really vital and important that we use this time, this moment in time, with having the home World Cup and with me being here and the success of the team and the quality of the team for the men's team at the first team level. Like, we use all of this momentum to make sure that the sport never looks back. Right, that the future of the sport in the country, for players, for coaches, for administrators, for directors, for all of these things, that there's real opportunity to create something special in this country for the future and for future young men and women. So that is really my passion project. Right. And again, I think we've done a lot. We've raised a lot of money. We've changed the overall landscape for what the youth national teams are. If the U17s can find a way to get a win and win the group, by the way, they had their first win ever in the U17 World Cup when they beat Uganda. Like, there's a shift in the paradigm of what's happening with the sport in this country. And this is what we're trying to do, is make sure that we capture the World Cup moment as well, to make sure that there's momentum, that there's belief, and that there's a real foundation for what this can be for the future.
I love that. And I know there's going to be a lot of Canadians that are super excited to hear that, so I appreciate that, Jesse. Let's shift gears a little bit to the World Cup. And again, I'm going to draw back on my mentor, Pete Carroll, but he almost never spoke about winning. That was his whole thing. He said, hey, if we do all of these things, at least in my era when I was with him, that will lead to wins. So right now, you know, you're talking about next summer. Obviously, there's been a lot of hay put in the barn before this conversation. But if you had to, you know, fast forward and talk about the end, let's say the World Cup is over and let's take out records. What would mean a successful World Cup to you? And again, I know it's a bit of a strange question, but I don't really care about, okay, winning the World Cup. Let's take out winning for now. Obviously, that's the goal. And I think everybody in the country thinks we're the dark horse is going to make a lot of noise. So that's on the table. But for you as the head basically of Canadian soccer right now, what does success look like at the World Cup off the pitch?
Well, look, I agree with Coach Carroll that, you know, winning is the byproduct of the process of what you create, right?
Yep.
And if you do that, if you every day you go through the work and you invest in the team and you create a clear strategy and identity that everyone knows what you are, who you are, and how to commit fully to that. Right? This is the key to anything. It's not sports, it's not football, it's not soccer. It's just anything in life. If you want to be part of something, you have to have a clear identity and an idea of how to get there. Success is creating a movement. You know, you look at the Blue Jays and they lost the World Series, but they changed the idea of what that team is and what the sport is in the country, and they helped, I think, at a time where there's been a lot of political turmoil in terms of our region and everything that's going on with a certain country down south that I happen to be from that I'm not going to mention.
Yes, I understand. I will get into Wisconsin here in a second. I was wondering if you're a Packers fan.
Yeah, I am a Packers fan, actually. I am.
Oh, gosh. We got to end this. We got to end this conversation. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Huge Packers fan. But, you know, I think what the Blue Jays created was a movement, right? And something that I think the Canadian society needed. And I even said earlier this week that the World Cup's going to be even bigger than what the World Series was for Canada. But all of that is predicated on us winning. So,
yes,
you know, as much as I believe in doing the little things in order to win, we have to win. We've never had a point in the World Cup. We've never had a win in the World Cup. Like I said, the 17s have now crossed that threshold, and we have to get out of the group. You know, we're at home, and this will help us electrify the nation, and I think help us create a movement and help us capture the hearts and minds of what Canada is. So I'm excited for it, and I know that our team will be good. Look, a lot a lot comes down to, obviously you want to have a draw that's manageable. You want to make sure that you have a healthy team so that going into the tournament, you have as many of your best players available to give you the best chance to succeed. But, we're doing everything that we can on a daily basis to just maximize the overall experience of who we are and what we are to make sure that we're prepared for when that moment arrives.
So let me ask you this. If you had to put a characteristic, your top 3 characteristics when you show up game 1, okay? And I'm not a soccer guy, but I have told people I'm half Italian. I would sit with my nono and watch Udinese. Okay, I do follow a little bit of Serie A.
Calcio.
Yes,
Calcio.
yes, that's right. Okay, I still got to get to a game, which I'm going to get to.
Okay, well, I'll take you one. Let me know. I'll take you.
I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What characteristics are at the top of your list? We're lining up for game 1. You're in your home soil. What do you want this team to be described as? And I'll say, I thought as a fan, I honestly believe that teams fear playing Canada because of their toughness. So I'm hoping toughness lands in your top 3. But if you had to do 3 characteristics of what your team wants to embody going into game 1, what would they be?
Well, they would be. Look, I coached in Germany and Austria, and I learned German when I was there, and we have a phrase that we use for our football in those countries, and it is aggressiver is immer besser als passiver, and it means that being more aggressive is always better than being more passive, and we implement this in our tactics, in our way of life, in everything we do. So aggressive. We always want to press the opponent. We always want to go after it. We want to make it difficult on them. We want to be vertical. We want to sprint. We want to run.
I'm ready to play right now.
Yes. Next is intensity, intensity of duels, intensity of sprints, intensity of physically imposing ourselves in the match. And then the last is, look, these are sort of one of our phrases that we use is we want to play with speed and power. This is the fastest team I've ever coached. Right? When you have Alphonso Davies, when you have Moise Bombito, when you have Tani Aloeshi, when you have these kinds of Tejan Buchanan, we have really good football players, but we have the highest level athletes. And I said when I came into the team, I said, look, this is probably the fastest team I've ever coached. But when I watched them play, they didn't always come across as an athletic team. And I said, going forward, for sure, we can't have any match where we're not more aggressive, where we're not more athletic, where we're not the faster team, where we don't play with more tempo, where we don't play with more intensity. And that has been the key to evolving our team to be more successful and evolving our team to now scaring more of the best teams in the world.
I mean, I could see why the squad shows up to play Ecuador at home in November. That was a pretty fun speech to listen to right there. And I get it. Again, I think from an outsider and not a soccer expert, I think that comes through the television.
I think Pete Carroll would agree with us, right?
He would definitely agree with that.
Coach Carroll would be right along with us.
Yes, he would. So now, changing gears a little bit, Jesse, if you don't mind, on this show, we like to do top 5s every week, and we change the top 5s around. So you're a guy who's coached in a lot of places, including the Premier League, played in a lot of places. So I was wondering if you could help me out with the top 5 this week, which is going to be top 5 hostile soccer environments to play in.
Okay.
So in your time, if you had to rank 5 to 1 on the road, and you could say, hey, I'll allow this. Home games, wherever you're at, if you thought it was more hostile for the opposing team, put it in your count. But top 5 hostile places to play.
Okay, I'm going to go number 5 I was the coach at Leeds United, and I would say Ellen Road. Ellen Road is an incredible place to play and very, very difficult. Number 2 would be Dortmund. Playing at Dortmund, they have something called the Yellow Wall where they have 35,000 people behind one goal, and it's an amazing place to play. Number 3 would be Anfield. That's Liverpool. What an amazing stadium. And I've had success there. By the way, I was the coach of Leeds United when we were the first team to win at Anfield in 5 years.
Can we do a quick pause? What is that like after? So I see the Premier League hooligans, I think they call themselves. You go into Anfield and get a win. What is the atmosphere like after that?
Yeah. Look, it's hostile, but it's just high energy, man.
Energy.
And
Gotcha.
Liverpool has been so good And that team, you know, when they're at their best and the way that their fans get behind them and then knowing how to cheer at the right time, and you just feel like they've got their foot on your throat the whole game, right? And with their fans behind them, like, and when we won, it seemed like we almost achieved an impossibility. And it's funny, like in high level sports, and you don't, it's different when you're a player. When you're a player and you win those games, you're celebrating, you're on the pitch, you know, the experience of doing it together is like nothing else. When you're a coach, you're just relieved it's over, man.
Interesting. Yeah, totally different. Totally different. And you would know both sides of it.
Yeah, the stress, it's so much harder to stand on the sideline and like try to make the right decisions and remove the emotion and know everything that's happening. So, yeah, I would say, you know, relief, total relief.
Relief. Love that.
That it's over.
Okay. So, sorry, we'll get back to the list. I appreciate that.
Is Azteca in Mexico. Okay,
it's got to be crazy in there.
Talking about fans, elevation, 100 to 110,000 people screaming, yelling, throwing things at you, like, you know, yelling, you know, calling your family names, you know, I mean, you go through it all, right? And number one, I've only been as a spectator, but at Boca Juniors play at a stadium called La Bombonera. And it's down in Buenos Aires. And for me, it's the most vibrant, loud, passionate fan base and crowd and stadium. They call it the Horseshoe because one whole side of the stadium, there's a street behind it, and it's just a straight wall. It comes straight up. There's not even stands. It's just a wall. And the noise and the energy and the sing and it never stops. Like probably the best fans in football. So that's what I just made that up, by the way, but I'm pretty proud of that. That's a good number.
That's a good list. I'll tell you this too. It sounded, I was impressed where it sounded like, you know, for the most part, the fans were very enjoyable. I'll never forget, I was a rookie, and we were playing a preseason game in Oakland at the time, and they played in Alameda. I'm not sure if you've been to Alameda.
Yes.
Bit of a strange place.
Yeah.
But our director of player engagement was like, you know, you're a rookie, your parents are trying to come to the preseason games. He's like, hey, are your parents coming? I'm like, oh, thinking about it. He goes, don't bring them.
Yeah, not a good idea.
And he goes, and if they do come, make sure they're not wearing one Seahawk gear because it's not going to end well. So I'm glad that none of that. That I find just takes it a little too far.
Oh, look, I've had my wife come to games, away matches, and sit sometimes even in the home crowd, and like, you know,
I can imagine that'd be tough.
Look, you know, I always think you want fans to be really passionate about their game, their teams, and the sport, but you also want there to be real respect and love for like the fact that even the opponent may love their team as much as you do, and like there should be a camaraderie behind that. So, in our sport worldwide, it can cross the line, and there's plenty of examples of that. But overall, you know, I think that those stadiums represent, I think, a great combination of passion and love for the game and love for their team, but also in a respectful way that pushes what the game is about.
Love that. All right, Jesse, I know you got to get rolling. You got a great match coming here on Thursday, but the last question I've got for you, I've got two quick ones. So one of them, in the NHL, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if the goalie gets hurt and then the backup goalie goes in and he gets hurt, they take a guy from the crowd. There's always a guy in the crowd.
Okay.
Just letting you know, I just want to put this on your radar if you want to travel me with the team. I don't know if you can see this photo.
Look.
That's me in grade 12 right there, ready to go.
Look at you. Yeah, you look good. Hey, that's good form right there.
Yeah, no doubt. You know what happened?
Yeah, not bad.
Hey, we got fourth place at OFSA. Look at us.
Hey, dude, look how big you are. You're like a giant.
So I'm roaming the streets of Villanova High School, and the soccer coach there, Mr. Krepp, who's on the right. He's like, hey, Luke, we got a pretty good squad. All my boys, like I said, I'm half Italian. I'm the least Italian. All my buddies, they're all on the team. They're like, man, come play goalie. I was not that great, but we made it. We did all right.
Look. Come out. You should come to training, okay? We'll put you through the rows and we'll see how it goes, man. But
see how if you need the goalie from the fans, you can be like, hey, I could be the guy. I'm just letting you know.
You're the enforcer too. I can tell you're the enforcer.
I would love that role. I'll tell you that. I would embrace that. So Jesse, one thing I want to ask to close this up is we're all pretty excited for next summer. You know, everything that's built to this point. Last year's Copa America, the great players you have on the team. If you have one thing you would ask from the fans, from us, what would it be? When, again, we talk about next summer, lining up on the World Cup, home soil. What do you want from the Canadian soccer fans? Let's hear it right from you.
My goal when I took this job was, in the way that we play football, in the kind of mentality that we create in the team, that we inspire this nation, right? And it's our responsibility, but I'm asking for the fans' commitment in this as well. I want to make sure that come June 14th, June 20th, and June 26th, in Toronto, in Vancouver, that when the whistle blows, right, that stadium is full at kickoff, that everyone is wearing red, that everyone is waving flags, that they understand the chants, and that they make sure that those three environments at the start of each one of those games, that they help the team understand and feel invincible. Like we can beat anybody, like there's nothing we can't achieve. And I think that the team is doing everything to prepare themselves to make sure that we're doing that on the inside. And I ask that we have a sporting community that does the same. And by the way, I've seen it. I've seen now the Blue Jays. I've seen the Olympics. I've seen enough examples. I've seen that when the Oilers are in the NHL finals. I've seen how this country comes alive for their sports teams. And now to have a national team with a home World Cup, I expect it to be at the highest level, and I can't wait to get to June 14th.
Jesse, I got goosebumps, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I know we're all excited. We'll be following this Thursday, and we'll be following all the way. And I got a feeling you're going to get your wish. I got a very good feeling that the fans will show up, baby. So thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thanks, Luke. Talk to you soon, buddy.
What an electric interview from Jesse Marsch there. I mean, so just to give, again, some of the listeners, obviously guys develop reputations, and every single person that I've spoken to about Jesse Marsch has just spoken off camera like so glowingly about the guy. You can see it there. It just seems wildly authentic and, really kind of embodies Canada. So that was a fun conversation. And as we wrap up episode 4 here, I do got to say, this week I'll be in Winnipeg heading to the Grey Cup, and I'm pretty excited because I got to give the flowers out. I know last week was a big tribute to Saskatchewan, but what an unbelievable CFL game that was, especially. I know there's a little bit of controversy, but Mosaic was rocking. Saskatchewan showed up, and here we go. Saskatchewan's going to Winnipeg to try and win a Grey Cup, so I'm excited about that. Hilltops won the Canadian Bowl. The Huskies-Rams game went down to a last play. It was 1 point. The Rams tried to punt one in the end zone for a Rouge, and it landed at the 2. That's the Regina Rams against the University of Saskatchewan Huskies. So congrats to Scott Flory and the Huskies. Both squads, great game. They move on. Again, flowers to Saskatchewan football as they showed out last weekend and won a lot of football games. And that's it for episode 4 of Film Never Lies.